Hello, and welcome to the AQUALIS Sustainable Water Compliance Summit, closing keynote conversation with Darin Olien. I'm Erin Zaske, Chief Development Officer at AQUALIS. To begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's event. First of all, if you have any technical difficulties during today's event, please put your question in the questions window and our technical experts will help you out. We recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with your webinar player. Additionally, we welcome your questions during today's event. We will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow our conversation, but please feel free to send your questions at any time. To do so, simply type your questions into the Ask a Question window on the side of your screen and hit the Submit button. Also, please be aware that today's event is being recorded, and you'll be notified by email when the archive is available. Now, let me introduce you to Darin Olien. Darren is co-host of the Emmy Award Winning #1 Netflix docu-series Down to Earth with Zac Efron. Spending nearly 20 years exploring the planet, discovering new and underutilized exotic foods and medicinal plants as a superfood hunter, Darren developed Shakeology, grossing over $4 billion in sales since 2008 for Beachbody. He also created a plant-based Ultimate Reset 21-day detoxification program for the company. From his years of experience within the health space, he wrote his New York Times best-selling book, SuperLife, The 5 Fixes That Will Keep You Healthy, Fit, and Eternally Awesome. As host of the widely popular podcast, The Darin Olien Show, Darren curiously explores people, solutions, and health, as well as life's fatal conveniences, a segment of the show uncovering modern-day flaws and challenges that may be undermining our health and our environment. Darren holds a Bachelor of Arts in Exercise Physiology, Nutrition, and a Master's in Psychology. Darren, welcome to our summit.
Hey, thanks, Erin. It's always interesting hearing someone talk of your CV in front of you. It's always funny. Great to be here. Awesome.
So we can just jump right into some of the conversation that we've created around today. You've had a lot of experiences worldwide, and they're well documented. So in your experiences of world travel and work in conservation, what's your greatest fear for the population today when it comes to water preservation?
Oof. I think it's apathy. We can have these conversations, we can give statistics, and it still feels distant because, especially in the first world, which you can go to your faucet and turn on flowing water that at least perceives to be clean. And in out of sight, out of mind. So you don't realize that 2.2 billion people on the planet largely are playing Russian roulette or not even have access to clean water. Plus, I've seen people around the world not even knowing what clear water even looks like, right? So that's the scary thing for me, the inaction around this, having these conversations. I'm so grateful to be here and to have, I've heard, talk of some great researchers and scientists and experts talking about the chemicals and the things in our water and all of that stuff. Again, I think as a human family, we have some issues and we have to work together. So mobilizing activity and action from these types of conversations, as opposed to going back to our siloed life, thinking that we don't have power, and the altruistic side of us needs to be ignited and turned back on, and step out of fear of life and move more into the action of what we know is going on, because I think we know a lot more than what we're willing to acknowledge, right? So many people say all the time, it's like, I don't want to know. Many of your speakers have talked, and we talked before we recorded about, the PFAS and the 8,000 different kind of constituents of that class of thanks to our grandfather Teflon, you know, people say, you know, there's this conversation of I don't want to know, and that's not a fulfilling way of life. Because for me, when people say I just want to live life, I don't want to worry about it. The problem is that we are this real physical, chemical, biological being, sentient being, walking around, breathing, eating, drinking, existing. And just because you don't want to deal with it, your physical existence, your family, your pets, your extended family, your human family, all of us have to deal with apathetic choices. So that to me is, I think, is a type of, I don't know, lack of a better word, of a plague that we need to kind of live more honestly with what's going on, and then have the willingness to take action. And the thing that I will say about that, I just had a great conversation with Peter Singer, who has authored and edited over 50 books and really speaks to altruism, and has great TED Talk on this very topic. And when we take action on the things that we know, the gift that it gives us, because what that does is it aligns our heart and our soul and our mind with action that's aligned with not only things that are better for us, but also better for the world. That I don't even think we can possibly even measure the goodness that does for you, your being, your heart, your soul, your biology, your chemistry, and that action that's aligned for a better world. And so, dare I say, that's a better choice to make for a better mental outlook on life as well. Because when we act out of kindness, when we act out of integration of something we know and take action towards that, we know that those acts of kindness, we know that those integrations are physiological. We know that turns on even that, maybe not so far as oxytocin as a long hug, but the vasopressin and these dopamine and serotonin, these things become, hey man, I'm doing something good, even if it's just the person in the mirror acknowledging that. So that's a long way of saying apathy is the thing I'm the most concerned about, because, you know, I wrote this, you know, my latest book, Fatal Conveniences, from that mere fact of like, and your speakers are talking to these chemicals. We have to face this, because if we don't face what's hurting us, or not in the best interest, or a system that may provide some benefit, but also we're not addressing others, then we don't get the full expression of what's possible. And I always use this example. Think of it as like, you know, an intimate relationship that you have. And if you're withholding, and you have if you withholding something, resentment builds up. Resentment then creates this festering of anger, and then this blame, and then the pointing starts. If you would only do this, then I would feel better. This is a dangerous slope to go down as a human. And so I look at all of this stuff and the talks that you're having and the openness that this facing of our issues together, all industries, this to me is the answer for our world's problems. And so that's what the kind of the hope out of the apathy I get excited about.
So before we went live, Darren and I had an opportunity to, chat for a little bit behind the scenes. And we talked about, one of the tracks that we had today did relate to PFAS, or forever chemicals. So the majority of our audience truly understands what those are, what that means, where they come from. But in your experience, what concerns you the most about where we are as a society and potentially, where we need to head and how much more quickly we need to be moving?
Well, we have a really bad chemical romance going on, and that is a divorcing of, call it the laws of nature, right? So we have created this chemical soup that infiltrates our water, infiltrates our air, infiltrates our soil, and then it comes back in a bad way. We talk about circular economy and how you can kind of best practices your way through as a business or capitalism in an open and transparent way. This is the opposite. So we create the beauty products with the doesn't wipe off. Well, that's PFAS, and you've had other speakers talk about this. You have all these non-slip, heat-resistant packaging interacting with our food, PFAS. What happens with the negative side of this circularity is that we use these things, or we drink this water. That water was once a PFAS that was being used in some other chemicalized product. So that product itself, we're being exposed with, right, by using it, and then we throw it away. And there's no away. There is never an away. It never goes away. We have failed at recycling miserably. So straight up. So am I saying don't recycle? No, I'm not saying that. But we're only recycling 5%. The more complex we make even our products, the less we can kind of break it apart and even recycle it anyway. So largely 95% of everything you've rightly put in that recycling bin, only 5% is recycled. So this kind of thing. So what's happening? Where is that other 95% going? Air, water, soil, animals, vertebrates, all of this stuff. And then it comes back to us. And one classic way is through our water, right? And then, of course, we're not sophisticated enough, which is why we're having these conversations. We're not sophisticated enough. We've done our greatest to make sure that when we turn on that tap, again, it's an amazing accomplishment. We've done a great job to turn that on-demand water in our first world situation. Not to mention we failed at about 2.2 billion people, again, who don't have that. So let's address that for sure. But the not addressing what's also affecting us without the knowledge of the populace is a very dangerous place to go, because we know these things are connected to endocrine disrupting. We know that they're likely carcinogenic, and then the incessant exposure to it. So this is where the focus is to just, face these things so that we can kind of overcome them together. And I like to mobilize this stuff going, okay, if we can't move the container large ship fast enough, then let's just start maximizing the choices we can take as individuals, because we need to protect ourselves from this modern day acceleration of, unfortunately, terms of plausible deniabilities, right? You're not doing enough testing. We don't know. This is a really bad experiment. And it's failing us, and it's in front of us. So, but again, I definitely have a lot of hope around it, but I kind of go back to radical honesty of us as relating to each other. Let's be honest, and also radical honesty of our systems. That you're looking at a system, if anyone does an audit on our recycling system, for example, would it pass at 95% failure rate? I don't think so. So, we need system resets. And we need, again, and these things don't happen in silos. They may be inspired in silos, but eventually we all need to work together.
Yeah, I agree completely. And so we have a brilliant audience with us today, right? We have people from the EPA, we have multiple institutional and residential facilities, municipalities, property managers, those who are compliance leaders within, Fortune 100 companies, all who are or have put into place a water compliance program within their organization. They either have or they want to, right? So we have the right audience to start creating that change. But it takes more than one person at either, the city or at a company to create that change. How do we start? We've started the conversation, right? We're having the conversation today, but how do we make the conversation more relevant to the whole? Right now, AI is the biggest conversation that's happening on the globe, right? Because it can impact anything, it's going to impact the unknown. We don't know. But we have a very near-term problem when it comes to water preservation and conservation. How do we create a larger conversation around this?
Yeah, I think we need to, my hat's off to everyone who's in those organizations, and there's great people. I'm in constant contact with some big organizations, and I'm always inspired with great people, again, trying to move these big organizations towards other solutions. But I really think that it's also going to take outside of the box thinking, outside of the system, in order to then reinvent it within the systems, right? So this is where, I got fascinated about, again, just a little water really hit me home when I was in the middle of Africa several different times. Senegal, Kenya, Uganda, right in the heart of it, going, oh yeah, this is insane that we have people living in this situation. Again, out of sight, out of mind. And when you see it, when you feel it, when you see these children that are playing Russian roulette with water that is not clean at all, and thousands are dying every year, it imprints you. I'm imprinted forever with that knowledge because I experienced it in terms of that witness of it. So that to me then got me into like, what can we do? I was involved with a nonprofit called Raincatcher, and we got upwards to about 800,000 kids throughout Africa and India clean water, and it was simple in a complex way, right? So it was simple. Let's catch rain and let's filter it, right? And we were using no mechanics. We're using filters and pressure, right? So we had these little, I think it was Sawyer, the water filtration Sawyer had these great, they could put on the can of every jerry can, and that's how we would show them. And I would be in the middle of nowhere, and I would show them how to filter it with their existing stuff, and then I would take the first drink, and they would all like, whoa. And then they were like, let's see if he dies first, right? And thank God I didn't, but it was the awareness that it's that simple for that situation, and yet it's not happening at a rate. Of course, there's great organizations, Charity Water and all other places, and wells and things like that. So that being said, I'm just giving that context because that context then also put me in 20 years ago into there's ambient humidity, right? It's part of the hydrolytic freshwater cycle, right? So let's curate, let's harvest atmospheric water. And I was involved in many companies back in the day, but then there's clearly issues. There's power issues, huge amounts of power, archaic, desiccant kind of technology. So all that to say, there's some really exciting things. So a couple of things that we are doing I'm involved with this company Alpha Core, which largely you can't find anything on the internet because they're badass, just guys doing a lot of stuff. So my partner, Mike, Chris Patton and Scott Robertson, and we're working with Michael Fulton from NASA. There's some very, very cool technology that's actually been around. And one of it is the metal organic frameworks. And that is basically metal ions on a molecular level making sponge-like material. So it creates, and you can play with these different metal ions, and it can do many different things. So we're going back to that technology to be able to create a super efficient molecular desiccant that can pull huge amounts of water out of the atmosphere with virtually no power. So that's kind of the one of the areas of excitement, because you're bypassing, as soon as it becomes groundwater, you've got other issues, right? So I, again, outside of the box thinking, these things I'm excited about, because we're also dealing with some cryogenics. We're peeling nitrogen out of the air on demand and making a copper wall of cold, which becomes its own basically refrigerator desiccant, because cold with humidity hitting it becomes basically a rain wall. And then we're also looking at, my partner Chris is literally on a plane right now, sponsored by the government of Portugal, helping out some of their island communities, and some of those things we're going to implement many different technologies, some of which I've talked about, and so these are the kinds of things that we're looking at. We're also looking at power systems for micro-desalination activity. So I think there's about 17,000 large desalination plants around the world. The major problem, which is why we need to look at all aspects of this stuff, because on the one hand, just like tap water, of course it's good, but then on the one hand, you've got this little not integrated side of it where we're getting exposed to volatile chemicals. Similar with the desalination, number one, very, very energy consumptive, as well as creating a huge amount of brine, right? So a Soleil that they inject back in the ocean, which also kills the ocean, right? So it creates these dead zones. So so what do? Okay, micronize these things, have a different power source. So we're working on, we have a power source this is going to sound weird, but I'm just creating some excitement here. It's turning on ambient humidity in the air with frequency, and we're able to ignite the hydrogen on demand that's naturally occurring in the air. So that becomes our power source. As crazy as that sounds, believe me, it works. And we use that as a power source to create heat, to flash steam, salt water. We take this sodium chloride, and every engineer, even 8th grade science student who is paying attention knows that when you take hot sodium chloride and throw it in water, it blows up. So we can make actually power from the brine instead of putting it back in the ocean. So these are some of the out-of-box thinking that is starting to click. It's starting to click in a big way. We are being commissioned all over the world right now to solve certain issues. So anyway, it's much bigger conversation. So I just tried to kind of wrap this in a nice little bow. But I think for me, staying in touch with big industry, like I'll say it to everyone right now, like, please reach out, because we want to and we need to move together on this stuff, because There's great work. Visa is doing great work. I know Walmart is doing great work. My buddy Paul Hawken, who wrote Regeneration and a bunch of other stuff, he's doing great work with some of these big companies. They're on board. You guys are on board. I get it. We just need more and more activity, and we need more and more activation of things outside the box. So anyway, that's a little snippet into some of the solution-based stuff that we're looking into.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, right? And so a lot of the conversation, or not a lot, but we've had a lot of conversation or questions around how do we we're losing talent due, retirement and things coming up out of the water sector, and recruiting into the water sector seems to be a little bit of a challenge because I don't know if we haven't created enough excitement around it or what that is. But, what we're talking about today, these are exciting things that are going to revolutionize, the world, right? So how do we create not only thinking, being solution driven and driving change, what are your recommendations around creating excitement in the water sector for younger individuals coming out of school and thinking, hey, this is a cool place to be. This is where I want to make my career.
I tell you what, if I were a CEO and someone who could make choices in some of these areas, I would make incubators for the kids to figure out solutions. Don't tell them a lot. Just tell them what the issues are and let them incubate solutions, because then they're creating their own career path, right? And then let them interact with some of the, create a foundry of opportunity, right? That's where I think you could really get some excitement, instigate entrepreneurial thinking, outside the box thinking. And then the other side is we need to have these conversations. We need to make them sexy. We need to realize that when you go against nature, when you don't acknowledge all of her, you're going to have some serious side effects. But when you go with her, then you have kind of this pleomorphic beneficial activity. Perfect example, dirt versus soil, right? If you increase the biomass of soil as opposed to the chemicalized farming that we're just ridiculously efficient at and just not so great in a lot of different ways for the environment and for the soil itself and water retention. Hell, 1% of biomass increase of the soil itself holds 20,000 gallons more per acre. This is when you work with nature. So you're increasing the soil's biomass to allow that. Again, I was talking about the metal ions. We're basically making molecular sponges. The biomass of the soil makes sponges for the soil to be able to draw down instead of running off. So these are the kinds of things that we need to look at, and then show it, right? So that's why I have fun. I'm working on a whole nother new TV show where we're diving also into problem solution orientation of just making the shit exciting, because it freaking is. But what's not exciting is thinking you have an answer and then you just double down on it, and it clearly has a million problems to it. So that's the side of it. We need to inject ourselves with new thinking. We need to be okay with not knowing how to get there. And listen, the greatest scientists on the planet, well, this is my current point of view. That's a healthy scientist. That's a healthy researcher, because you only know what you know at the time that you know it. And so if you're willing to inject new thought, new people, and ask better questions, we will get better outcomes, guaranteed. But we have to be willing to take that action. We have to be willing to go, okay, maybe it's going to take a year or two or whatever the time frame is. Our profit margin isn't going to be apathy is great because we're going to spend a little time over here kind of following what nature can show us, but the benefits far outweigh. I mean, Paul Hawken's Drawdown book clearly showed if you invest into infrastructure that's infinitely beneficial, you will have profits that will blow your mind. You don't have to greenwash anything because you'll be providing benefits all along the way. So we have to get out of this kind of structured thinking and just open up the aperture a little bit, get the thought in. I would incubate the hell out of kids because, you know, the school systems, they don't really create like that open thought patterns. They give you great education, they give you a good foundation. I received it too, but also the opportunity to create other ways of thinking, throw brilliant kids into a problem, you know, quote unquote, lock them in a room and see what they come up with. Like inspire them to solve this because it can happen. And then again, do other cool shows that show this stuff, because when you show it in a beautiful way, we were blown away with Down to Earth, blown away, because clearly the thing that we were focused on was finding great people doing great things. And then we came in, I kind of kept my mouth shut. Zac came in with kind of not knowing anything about those particular things, essentially. And we asked questions, we were open and let those people shine. And there's solutions for this. There's a lot of things. And I would have, actually, if it was up to me, I would have investigative teams going and vetting different technologies that are doing things that could value and improve your business and improve the problems that we're facing. Other ways to chelate some of these chemicals and heavy metals and all of this stuff out of our water. Maybe it doesn't have to be, you know, we're doing kind of basic bare minimum stuff, but we just have to be better. So anyway, those are some thoughts.
No, I think that's great from an education perspective. Let's flip it a little bit, because you and I talked about how we both grew up in small communities where you typically have, you know, one regulator who is responsible for stormwater, wastewater, water as a whole for either the city or the county, right? So there's that perspective when you think of the small areas where we came from in the Midwest versus, you know, working within from a larger organization, the government infrastructure that is more institutionalized and less focused on innovation. So how do we get that's a broad group of people, right? How do we get those individuals? They're excited about it, but they might not have the tools to get things accomplished. So, you know, from the larger perspective as the community that is, you know, listening today, what can we do to, you know, help create those solutions and be thoughtful moving forward and enable those individuals?
If I understand what you're saying correctly, some people are probably not going to like my answer. And I will say it this way. We have to be willing to show what we're good at and also show what we're not good at, what we need to improve on, right? So if I was in my hometown, your hometown, right? If we were in that community and I had my wastewater system going, hey, we have solved enough of the problem where when you turn on that tap, you're not going to die of cholera, typhoid, dysentery, diarrhea, right? Great, right? Thank you, right? Awesome. And we're also starting to improve. Here's the things we need to improve on. I would want to know that as a community. Don't hide it. And then as a community, when I now know, I can then, you know, mobilize and create change. We can create, you know, infrastructure to help, you know, do fundraising campaigns, do awareness, like involve people rather than pretending everything's okay or at the best practices. Because when you start telling people about that, going, holy shit, PFAS is in my water? Why is PFAS in my water? I thought this was being treated, right? So the dissonance between what people really think and what they expect and what is actually happening, there has to be some tough love here, right? That's my opinion. I think, again, when we face things together, again, we have provided a hell of a service getting water there, but these are the things that we need to improve on. I think we need to work together from the top down all the way to the smaller communities. And I think the smaller communities, we already know. When we know there's a problem, look around, man. Look around at acute situations that go on, right? When we know that there's a problem, people come together. But when we think there's something being done that isn't being done, that's when we have problems. So I think, obviously you don't want to create legal complications for yourself, right? But there has to be a way to improve and inform along the path.
So when it comes to, this is a sustainable water compliance summit that we've invited everyone to today. When it comes to sustainable water management, in your opinion, what should we be striving for as a whole? And whether that is, localized to the US, more than globally, or both the United States and globally, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's certain things that the first thing, this is just interesting. First thing that pops in my mind is we have 47 million acres of lawn in the United States, and we're watering it, all right? So call it a glorified border to your house. What if we just watered and curated better soil and then planted usable food? That alone, you would create better soil, you would create more drawdown, you would create less waste, and you would also, again, working with nature, she would then provide you infinite amount of food, and food insecurity would virtually go away. These are the kinds of things I think of. This is from great leaders in the permaculture movement and regenerative movement. This is this kind of thinking we have to get back to. So the how we're using it on massive scales, how we're using the water. Of course, you can go back to your house and as an individual and be more conscious of the amount of water you're using. But if we adopt these better practices that will not only improve water usage and retain more, it will also infinitely benefit you along the way by providing you food outside of your door, essentially. So that's one of the major things. And we can also use playgrounds and schools and things like this, where we can also continue to grow food and use the water for those types of purposes. It pains me to see a bunch of lawns and a rain coming down and all the water running away. And then water capture. I mean, I think countries have, created water capture off the roof and use of a filter and as illegal. Like, these kind of things are ridiculous. Like, these things are common sense. Water's falling on us. It's 1% of our hydrolytic situation. So let's catch it and use it. These kind of things. So these are again, I think are common sense kind of solutions that only have infinite benefits for everybody. So when I see policies that don't line up with common sense, it just I scratch my head.
Yeah, I think one of the things, that we need to do better as a whole is educate. And, we're, especially maybe as Americans, very good at out of sight, out of mind. If we're not feeling it today, it's not impacting us, then not necessarily our problem. And that's, the general public. I think, the audience today is very understanding and receptive of that. And that's why we're talking about it, is to create those ideas.
I think yeah. And off of that, I think, these organizations, the people listening, the people that have been involved, I would be educators of the normal person, of the individual. You're providing a great service, but also support them growing food, support them catching water, give them information, assets, make this exciting. And that's what, go back to the people, right? Because it's only going to benefit everybody. So I would, so many big companies come reach out to us all the time. Like, we want to be involved in the show. We want to do something, because they're desperate to be in touch with people and outside of greenwashing, right? We need to be real with this stuff. So, make that, extend that olive branch to your customer base, and talking with Visa the other day, they have, 2.5 billion users, it's like, holy shit, right? Give them information. May have nothing to do with your business. Wow, what a concept. You know what that does? Creates trust, because you're not just trying to, sell them something of your product. It doesn't, you're literally just being a steward. Take that responsibility. You guys are sitting here with the majority of the population that are benefiting from the great works that you've done. So keep educating, share more, share outside of your lanes, share what people want to know. And then they're like, oh, wow, they care. Because if you get them to care, you've got them as a customer, period. And you're not trying to sell them anything. You're just going, hey, we're here for you, and we're literally going to do it. And we're going to provide this info. So break down this fourth wall of you versus them, and just go to them, right? I think of the Kennedys, right? JFK and Robert Kennedy, like, they would go out to the people and just freaking listen and listen and listen. They're so effective because they were willing to drop everything and reach out. So as big companies, humanize it, man. That's what I would do.
So just one more question before we jump into the audience questions. And I think you've talked about a few of these things already, but as far as, what you've seen recently in context to water preservation or conservation, what has you the most excited? I know you're seeing some great things.
I mean, honestly, the land usage, the agriculture usage, the change from chemicalized farming to regenerative, because that naturally improves the water usage. Because again, you're just watching that water go away. I mean, that you can't also, even though we have some really incredible technologies that are utilizing water in a different way and power in a different way, you also have to go back to nature. So don't try to improve over her, move with her. So improving that biomass improves the water retention, improves the water usage, all along the way. And again, these, I'm leaning also in primary water, which is not part of the 1% of the lytic kind of atmosphere, ground, that kind of cycle, which is the deep, deep, deep primary water. There's some issues and to try to harvest it, but that's another 1% of the total water that exists. So that's interesting to me. So, there's deep, deep, deep reservoirs of primary water. So, these kinds of things. And I honestly, the desiccant technologies, I think are massive for fresh water. And then the micro-desalination aspect, I think, although big infrastructure has allowed for some of the greatest advancements of our time, but also we need to be very aware of kind of decentralizing some of that stuff. And if I were some of those companies, I would get involved in every aspect of that, because if you solve water issues that exist on every island, in many places, there is water. You can make an argument there's water issues everywhere because we have contamination issues. So if you decentralize some of that stuff and get involved with other technologies, then you're now not holding to a fear of your normal business model. Again, disrupt it. Get that input of youth, get that input of other people outside, and get involved with it. Like, don't just be them and they, like they over there and us over here, and this is what we do. Do all of it. Because I don't know about you all, but look around. We need everybody working towards the same thing: water, power, food, shelter, like waste remediation. Like, come on, like this is what we do. So and I'm very excited about more and more education on a big scale. I mean, honestly, it's funny, I didn't even put this together, but one of our most favorite episodes in season 1 of Down to Earth was on the water episode. It was by far the most watched episode because they were like, whoa. I mean, yeah, we went into, we kind of played with this miraculous side of water for a second, but people, their eyes got going, wow, there's all different types of water. There's all different things in the water. We didn't even get into contamination or anything else. So people know on a deep level, on the primal level, we need air, we need water, we need food. So be an educator, send those messages and be more than what you are. And that will create a lot of trust for the millions and millions of people that already are trusting you, but will then work with you to help solve some of these things. So, some of my thoughts.
Awesome. Well, we have some audience questions, and we only have a few minutes left here, so I'm going to jump into some audience participation, and a lot of these came in related to the conversation we've been having. So, PFAS are everywhere, right? If you think about an urban environment, they're in the atmosphere, they're airborne. How can we create safe, sustainable food sources by replacing our lawns? What are some suggestions you have there?
Oh, there's many organizations that can create templates for it. There's a great organization out of Florida called Food Forest Abundance. They have people all over the world who understand ecosystems and stuff. So you can get a plan and just pay for a plan and implement it yourself. Work with other organizations, Ecoversity, so understanding plants, understanding things. At the end of the day, you also don't need to make it difficult. So just start replacing some of the lawn for seeds and understand your and gardening is about trial and error. Some's going to work and some's not. So you just have to try and start and educate yourself, because it's how we founded this country. 90% of our population were farmers in the early 1900s. This is what we do, right? This is how we do it. And so this is in our blood, very, very intensely in our blood. We know how to grow food. And so, in terms of PFAS, outside exposure of food, like, this is all over the place. I would filter all water anyway, coming into your house, anything you're drinking, anything you're throwing on your food or your lawn or growing, start filtering.
You touched on recycling and how we haven't necessarily, figured that out as a whole. So what are your thoughts on how we move past we're only truly recycling 5% of what we're throwing away, right? How do we move past that?
Yeah, what do we do? We first have to understand that we're not doing well at it, which is why I bring it up. And it's not, I didn't come up with the studies. These studies are, we were doing 8% at 1.7, and now we're down to 5. So, there is some good industry changes that's happening in terms of different material science. There's a great company called Footprint that's working with many of the big boys, Walmart, Pepsi, ConAgra, McDonald's, changing from plant-based fibers and single-use plastic or using plant-based fibers instead of single-use plastic. So on a big scale, there's some great movement going on. And I think that I lost my train of thought. So from a big perspective, all of that is exciting and necessary. And then there's also the waste remediation or the waste annihilation. The things I get excited about is advancements into I looked into pyrolysis a long time ago, single-use plastic into usable fuels, and then down to graphene. And now the things have advanced even more. So we can annihilate everything from car fluff to tires to anything else. You can drive it into a molecular oblivion, into carbon black. So we have to, so think of it, the flip side is 95% is not being recycled, and there's no way, it's not going away. So we have to deal with waste remediation, waste annihilation. So instead of thinking recycling, not to say that still do your work, still recycle, still all of that stuff, but we really need to get aggressive on waste annihilation safely. Not burying it, because it's ending up, obviously it's being buried in our soil, it's showing up in our water, it's in the ocean, all of that stuff. So we have to get very serious about the waste we're creating. And then as an individual, we have to be smart. Like, what companies are you voting with every day? What are you using? Like, obviously you want to eliminate the beauty products, the personal care items, the clothing that have all kinds of PFAS in them. So that's a certain prescription for disaster. So eliminating that, plus packaging, start pushing back or voting with your dollars with companies that are more aligned with not using plastic when they can, and reusable materials. There's great advancements actually in PFAS too, which probably some of your people have talked about. Algae-based, heat-resistant, stain-resistant kind of things like as well. So we have to start illuminating companies that are doing things in this space, and then tell your friends. We have over 7 billion of us. We always have the numbers. We are not, and we never should be, the victim of governments and corporations. We should inform them and say, hey, this is where our trend is happening. And then as a corporation, you respond also to the favorable trends that are clearly showing that they want to change.
So we have a question here. It's from the Souls for the African Child Foundation. And they are interested in understanding if you are aware of any modern technologies that can be applied to harvest rainwater, especially in countries like Kenya.
Yeah, I think, listen, we used to use off of churches and schools, we would create a gutter system and a tank. And then that water would fall. And then we would use a Sawyer filter, the company Sawyer, Sawyer. And you could get these today. And I don't know, there was some organizations still using them, I'm sure. The company I was involved with, a nonprofit, no longer exists. But so that's an easy, because it's not, we saw several wells that broke, right? Not to say that they're still not good, because you need NGOs that are following up and helping to repair these things. So, so the Sawyer filter is simply a micron size that's not allowing the microbiological or virus to pass through. So it was gravity fed. Again, you cut a little hole in the jerry can. It doesn't hurt the jerry can because you connect the thing to it, and that is one of the easiest ways that I've seen any water source that you could you filter out and not die from. So, because if you get too complex in Africa, we've done some projects around solar panels, and then solar panels are broken apart and stripped of the wire, and then copper wire is sold to somebody. So you have to be also realistic and respectful of where you're at and what you're doing and who you're dealing with, and there's added layers on top of that. But that would be my recommendation, to do simple water filter situations of course the catchment side of it, but also virtually any water source, if it's not a chemical exposed water source, from a bacteria perspective, you can create clean water from that.
We have just a few minutes before we need to wrap up. Darren, is there anything else that you want to, make sure that we've touched on and that we're thinking of, kind of as a whole, and what we can do to start driving action towards solutions?
I mean, I would say that transparency of what's wrong, what's working, what isn't working is necessary, as even internally for all the corporations and all of the companies doing it. Let's be aware of what's going on so that we can do something about it. From a broad perspective, again, I like to educate individuals. I like to educate people like my brother and family who are still in Minnesota, that they can understand what I'm saying. Because if I start going into all these other things that they don't understand, that doesn't help them. So and even and I'll just say this, I don't even like using these terms climate change anymore, because it becomes, I can't even put my finger on it. I like to put my finger on it. We know what's contributing to the world. We're polluting the shit out of it. So let's just have real conversations about how to make those improvements. So I'm a big education, promotion, inspiration kind of thing. Let's educate, but then let's provide a solution. Let's keep showing what great works people are doing. So I go back to, that's why I want to do more education on the TV shows and things like that, and work with other companies, NGOs, and highlight what it is that they are doing, because then we can amplify this stuff. But again, it's like getting out of the closet of this stuff so that we can get it out in the world. Be proud of the changes that you're making. Be proud of it, and then figure out ways to let the world know. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the theme of the day.
Awesome. Well, I hate that we only had a short time, but I think the conversation that we've had has been great, and I hope that it stimulates a lot of conversations within our audience today, within their organizations, within their municipalities and cities they represent, and we as a whole at AQUALIS will continue to help support and create those conversations as well. So on behalf of AQUALIS, Darren, I want to thank you for participating with us today, and everyone for your attendance and participation as well. As you've heard throughout the day, all of our sessions will be available on demand, including the continuing education courses. I also want to thank our highly experienced and thoughtful presenters today. From our education sessions, our keynote addresses, and panel discussions, we hope you take away insightful, engaging, and thought-provoking topics and conversations that you can apply to your field and your position. We look forward to continuing providing thought leadership content for you, your colleagues, and the industry. And if you'd like to review any session today, you can have access to the event for the next 6 months. Thank you. This concludes the AQUALIS Sustainable Water Compliance Summit.